Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your warm reception, and I would like to thank all of you for this enormous attention that you demonstrated for this event. We have a record number today of members of the press here, and I do hope that it will be very useful for all of us. For my part, I will try and to be as frank as possible and answer all the questions of interest to you. Of course, it would seem quite natural to start with the results of economic results of the development of the Russian Federation, with the way we evaluate the development of Russia in the 2005 and our achievements. Right away, I would like to say that overall we are satisfied with the results for the year 2005. Some general indicators, I may be repeating some of them, but I would like anyway to mention those. The GDP growth for the country was 6.4% per annum, give or take a small amount. We'll be sure somewhere in March, but the basic number is this, which is not so bad, bearing in mind that we've initially planned some 5.9%. We have considerably grown in terms of the our markets in the year 2005. Of course, all the so-called developing markets have grown. In Europe, those include Poland, Hungary, in Latin America, Argentina, Brazil, South Korea, and Asia, which is one of the growth leaders in the capital markets. But as compared with one of the leaders, with Korea, our capital markets has grown by 88%, which is an absolute record, all-time record, both for the world and our country. All of this, well, of course, the gold reserves of our central bank have grown in record terms. In the year 2000, we started with 12 billion. Now we have 185 billion. Late last year was 182 and something. Stabilization fund of the government has grown considerably also, and as a result, we have some positive social progress. The average salary has grown by 9.8%. The take-home income has grown by 7.8%. The pensions have been increased by 13%, and our veterans are being paid considerably more now. I mean, the veterans of the war and all other types of veterans. All of these growth numbers that I've just given, they are in real terms, that is, minus inflation, net of inflation. I would like to specify right away that, of course, we are not satisfied with the results of the year 2005. We haven't managed to keep the inflation in check. That we planned for 8.5%. What we've got in terms, 10.8%, slightly lower than in 2004, but still considerable. We haven't managed to check, both in nominal and in real terms, the ruble rate, which has had negative influences in our commodities industries, on our commodities industries. Overall, we are satisfied with the results for the 2005. In political terms, in terms of the political development, I would like to note here the establishment of the public chamber as one of the civil society institutions. We've adopted a law giving an opportunity, possibility for the parties who won the elections to be instrumental in electing the leaders of the regions. And of course, we have seen the finalization of the institutions of the government in Chechnya. So, for now, Chechnya is fully within the constitutional space of the Russian Federation. There is a lot of things to do, both in social terms and economic-wise. The local self-government bodies have yet to be fully developed, but the main task has been achieved. And I would like to say that it would be correct to start now with the main part of our meeting, and I will try and answer your questions, please. I think you started the press conference last year and the year before. Not only last year, the year before. Шесть newspaper. Vladimir Vladimirovich, last year around we've touched upon difficulties of privatization of small land plots. We've managed to discuss it, and the government studied the issue, and Mr. Fratkov called it the Dacha Koshmar. What is your opinion? Will this amnesty result in an average person being able to privatize his or her small land plot and to maintain it? Well, it is very pleasant that we are now coming to the issues of the grassroots. Well, the efficiency of the government and of the entire state machinery. And here I would like to also quote the number of the citizens who live beyond the pale of the poverty line, rather, has been reduced significantly. What you've been talking about is very close to my last comments. Of course, the small land plots are very helpful for the majority of the population in the economic sense. We have formulated the necessary instructions for our government, which has prepared a draft law on liberalization of buying the small plots and the property thereon. And we do hope that this law will be adopted shortly. Row number 10D. The lady. 10D, please. Vladimir Vladimirovich, Russia Today. What was Russia guided by identifying its priorities in joining the G8? What are those directions? What could be your reply to the skeptics who claim that there is no place for Russia in the G8? We've been guided in choosing the main themes for the discussions during the G8 in St. Petersburg next summer by the challenges and issues faced that the humanity faces now. This is number one. And secondly, we've chosen the themes that would be where Russia could be instrumental in addressing and resolving them. It is quite natural that we have identified those subjects and questions in consultation with our partners during the Sherpa meetings and at the highest political level as well, with all the G8 leaders. And I'm extremely grateful to my partners for their support and their assistance in selecting those questions. It was quite natural for us to have as a priority the energy security in the world. Number two involves the control of infectious diseases and, of course, the issues and problems related to education. One way or another, practically all of those questions are being discussed during the G8 meetings on a continuous basis, and everyone agrees to make those questions elements of our agenda. As for the skeptics who do not believe that Russia belongs to the G8, well, there are such people, of course. They're still living in the last centuries. They are all experts in Sovietology, despite being the fact that the Soviet Union is no more. Well, what can I say? I know the sentiment amongst the leaders of the G8. Nobody objects it. Everyone is for the Russia's instrumental and practical involvement in the G8. Nobody wants the G8 to become a fat cat company. Because the difference, the imbalance in the world is growing. The gap between the so-called golden billion and the poorest countries is growing wider. Russia, on the one hand, demonstrates very good economic and financial indicators and growth. Our both state budget and the trade balance are well in the green, in the black rather. All of this gives us an opportunity to say that Russia has embarked upon a very correct economic policies. But we cannot say that our population is rich. It is very poor, which is our problem and our task, to reduce the number of the people, of the poor people in my country. And we, country that is developing, understands, like no other G8 members, the issues involved in the growth of the developing countries. So, additionally, the G8 is a club which is thinking about global issues related mostly to security. One cannot imagine addressing global nuclear safety and security without a major nuclear power being the Russian Federation. Everyone who says that Russia belongs or do not belong, well, let them keep talking. That's their job, maybe. The dog keeps barking and the caravan goes on. Truth, Olga Solomonova. A question related to the relations between Russia and Ukraine in the gas area. It seemed that late last year everything was decided upon between yourself and President Yushchenko. We are aware that Ukraine has been off-taking gas, despite the fact that Gazprom is increasing its deliveries to the Western Europe. What's your comment on this? Well, first of all, the very fact that we have managed to come to an agreement with the leadership of Ukraine, we managed to adopt common approaches to supplies of gas and other energy resources to Ukraine, which is a very positive element of our both bilateral and the world and the European energy sector. I do believe that the leaders of Ukraine have made a very correct step, having come to such an agreement, which is a compromise. Every side is satisfied with those agreements. At the same time, you are correct, you are right, that we've agreed on everything, we've signed everything regarding prices, the formula for the prices, the volumes of deliveries. Despite all of these agreements, in the absence of any conflict, what we've come across is a major off-taking of the Russian gas from the export pipeline running to Europe. During the period of cold spell, that was about 34 to 35 billion cubic meters of gas per day. Gazprom trying to offset those losses on a unilateral basis, increased supplies by 35 billion cubic meters daily. What happened next? Our Ukrainian partners continued to offtake 35 billion cubic meters plus the additional 35. All in all, 70 billion cubic meters per day was offtaken. And the question to the skeptics who believed that there was no need for the northern pipeline across the Baltic Sea. Is it necessary for the stable supplies to the Western Europe or not? Those who talk a lot, they must think, whose interests do they serve? The interests of their own population or some other interests, which I cannot possibly explain? We do hope and we do count that we will manage to maintain a balanced nature of our relations with Ukraine. I am gratified that the Ukrainian partners were able to say straight and frankly that they were off-taking gas. But what's important for us is that we get paid for the gas at agreed prices. This could be done at the end of February or in some other manner, since the volumes of gas supplied from Russia to Ukraine has been restricted by 17 billion per year. If we have exhausted all this quota, we will have to conclude another agreement. What's important is that we continue talking, and we do look forward to a positive result. Row 5, please.
Да-да-да, пожалуйста, Сань, верните микрофон коллеге, а потом уже мы дадим следующему.
Rafael Moreno, que responde Gazeta ABC.
ABC is from Spain. Mr. President, could you tell us, the idea is that Russia should join WTO this year, but there is no agreement neither with the United States nor with Bolivia. What are the prospects for resolving the issue, if you consider it an issue? Does Russia need to join WTO at all? Well, overall, we intend to continue our process of the accession to WTO. As I've mentioned, we can only do this on conditions acceptable to us, on the basis of agreements which do not go beyond the scope of the agreements reached by other countries in the course of their accession to WTO. If some requirements are made against us beyond that scope, we would not agree to that. The main task for us is to reach an agreement with the United States. As soon as we do it, Bolivia and Australia would come to an agreement with us. All our partners have supported our accession. What remains to be finalized is an agreement with the United States. We've been talking about the affiliates of the commercial banks and the opportunities for them to work in Russia. We stated our position that this is not acceptable to us. It does not provide for an opportunity for Russia to keep under control the financial flows, and the financial community is in agreement with us about this. At the political level, we need some specific steps to reach mutual. I know the mood of the President of the United States. From Magadan, please, row number 7. They say it's quite balmy there, -30 centigrade. Vladimir Vladimirovich, your position on the main areas of the development of the production of gold were made public last November, and we were quite elated about those, not only those living in the Far East. But now we have some apprehensions and worries related to the implementation of those provisions that you made public, including your instructions to the government. Perhaps not sufficient time have elapsed. And my question is, have you, Vladimir Vladimirovich, changed your position, being that the Far East is a strategic region of our state, which will continue to contribute to the richness of our country?
Of course, my attitude to that has not changed. You know that we have practically two federal targeted programs which are aimed at the development of territories, and among those priority territories we have chosen two, which is the Russian Far East and the south of Russia and Northern Caucasus. That is why in 2006 we are allocating additional resources to the promotion of those programs, and these resources will be higher than those of 2005, so that we establish all necessary conditions in order to develop the economy of those regions, improve the employment. And if speaking about the gold production, then I am convinced that all the instructions which have been discussed will be fulfilled. You might recollect that some of the colleagues were proposing certain conditions which are not acceptable to us, because it was proposed that ore should be transported abroad for further processing. This is unacceptable because we will not see the production, will not see the gold, and will not see the taxes. So I believe that all the parameters which have been agreed should be implemented. Yes, please, your neighbor. Associated Press, Steve Guterman. During your presidency, you said that Russia is a European country with European values and European culture. But sometimes Russia supports such ideas of such regimes in the former Soviet Union, which are not sharing those values, allegedly. I speak, for instance, about the events in Andijan and Russian support to the Uzbek leadership in those events. Don't you think that such approaches are incompatible with their views? I don't think that they are incompatible. Moreover, that we know exactly what happened in Andijan, and we know who, where, and to which extent was preparing and training those people who ignited the situation in Uzbekistan, in Andijan in particular. This does not exclude the fact that there are many problems in Uzbekistan, but this excludes such an approach during which we could be rocking the boat of the situation in this country. I expect that you know what Fergana Valley is. You know how difficult this situation there is, how difficult is the conditions of people who live there, their psychological feelings. We do not need second Afghanistan in Asia. We don't need any revolutions. We need evolution. That is why we're going to act very attentively and carefully, which will help us to improve those values you have mentioned and will allow us to avoid explosions which we saw in Andijan. Amra Abdelhamid, Al Jazeera. Mr. President, after the winning of the Hamas movement in the Middle East, there have been statements on behalf of the West in which they threaten or say that they will stop or cancel the support to the Palestinian people. Will your position change with regards to this situation? And do you share the view that the situation which is evolving now in the Middle East is the flop of the American diplomacy? Well, this is a great hit against the American efforts in the Middle East. It's a great blow. And I think that if we want to resolve great international problems, we should do it in a consolidated effort, in a joint effort. We should not be taking the bullets out of the fire by somebody else's hands. We have to take our decisions jointly. And if speaking about our position with regards to Hamas, then it is different from the position of the United States or Europe. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation has never identified Hamas as a terrorist organization, but this does not mean that we approve of or support those actions which are being conducted by Hamas and all the statements which have been recently done. We believe that it is one situation when such a political force was in opposition striving for power, and we know that all around the world opposition is following certain very strong statements, and another situation is when a party or a movement has received the support of the people, and people should feel the positive results of their rule. And to that end, they have to go away from the radical statements and admit the right for the existence of Israel, and they have to establish good contacts with the international community. And we are encouraging Hamas towards such consistent work. And we believe that refusal to help the Palestinian people is wrong in any case. Yes, please, lady on the balcony with notepad in her hands. In her hands. So, Nizhny Novgorod. Nizhny Novgorod. I don't see you. Where do you have this notepad? Okay. Vladimir Vladimirovich, you said that there is a new system of forming the executive authorities, and over the past 1.5 years, much has changed in Nizhny Novgorod, for instance, which I represent, and we could see the pros and cons of this process. So tell us, please, are you satisfied by the way this system is functioning now? Are you satisfied with the results? I am satisfied with the way it works. From the very beginning, I was saying that it is not appointment of leaders of regions from Moscow. This is a complex process of bringing to power with the participation of the federal center and the president and, of course, the citizens of this or another territory, of people who live in a particular region, with the participation of their legislative bodies. I should tell you that when resolving these matters, we faced what we're striving towards. What we're striving for, that's what we hit into, as the Russian saying goes. Which means that in certain regions, some candidates of ours were facing absolute inacceptance, and that is why we had to take into consideration the moods and the ideas and the views of the voters. We believe that through such a procedure, the governor will be interested in the implementation of the goals of the region, and at the same time will be incorporated into the whole system of the national goals. And I think that through that we'll manage to avoid the situation where we had governors with 3 terms in prison. Pavel Tuchinkin, Krasnodarsky region, and CKTV company. Vladimir Vladimirovich, what is your attitude towards the aspirations of the city of Sochi and Krasnaya Polyana towards the participation and hosting of Olympic Games, Winter Olympic Games in the future? What is the development of the Krasnodar region? The Krasnodar region is developing in a very good manner, and compared to other regions of the Russian Federation, it has very favorable positions, and it means that they have skilled professionals, good traditions, high political activity, high political involvement of people, good infrastructure and climate, all that. And we should openly say, and the leadership is consistent in its policy. The governor is conducting well-balanced policy in economy and other fields. I think that in general it is very good. This is to our satisfaction, and much can be done still. And if speaking about Sochi, then we'll be supporting the bid of Sochi as a candidate for the Olympic Games, and we'll be doing that independent of the results, because the country needs modern, well-developed infrastructure, and we need to establish a good center for recreation for our people. Sochi is a great region, good region, because the sea is close, but in the mountains they have snow all the way around, all the year around. For instance, myself, I skied there 2 years ago. This is difficult from the technical point of view. I had to jump off from the helicopter, but there is snow even in summer, so we are going to develop Sochi in any case. And if speaking about the investments, then it is more convenient when we have clear objectives to be hosts of Winter Olympics, for instance. 10th row, AFP, there in the 10th row. Fyodor Bystrov, Автосфера, Тольятти. Vladimir Vladimirovich, last December, Gazprom has devised its proposals with regards to the support or reorganization of the car-making industry. For instance, there was the idea to establish the National Car Building Corporation based on KAMAZ, AvtoVAZ, and Gaz. What are views on this situation with regards to the development? So please don't find me exceptionally bold. Can we have your personal car for test drive? Because Russians will definitely be interested to know about what the presidential car is equipped with. Which exactly car do you mean? The Volga, the Volga 21, the old-timer one, or at least could we make a report on this car? If speaking about the proposals with regards to the car-making industry, then I should say that the decisions which have been taken are very serious. They were criticized to a certain extent, especially in the field of taxation, customs, and those difficulties which are connected with the imports of old technology into the territory of Russia. But at the same time, we have fully formulated in the government the conditions for the industry assembly of cars and automobiles in territory of the Russian Federation. Those conditions are giving already good yields. We have signed already agreements with 6 international largest car-making concerns to produce their cars in the territory of Russia. And with 14 more largest corporations, we are having negotiations, we're having talks, and I'm convinced that good results can be obtained here. This is the first question. It's speaking about the concern of gas, Avtovaz, and KAMAZ. This is possible on the one hand, but this is to be identified by the owners of those enterprises. If they find that such an association can facilitate the development of the Russian car-making industry, then definitely we'll support such a decision, but we're not going to force any decisions. The G sector. Impulse, a newspaper, Zelenogorsk, Krasnoyarsk. I'm representing a city which belongs to Rosatom, and much interest was raised by the global initiative which has been announced by you a week ago. You said that during the G8 summit, within the framework of Russia's presidency, you are going to put forward an initiative to establish international centers to offer services of nuclear fuel cycle. For instance, in uranium enrichment for those countries which do not belong to the nuclear club. Tell us, please, what does this mean for Russia? Why is that needed? And what tasks are put in the light of that before Rosatom? We know very well how intense and how strange is the situation in the energy sector in the world, in all countries, in the United States, in Europe, all around the world. The ways and the sources of alternative energy are being watched for, be it hydrogen energy, wind energy, the energy of tide, or anything else, or bioresources. Some people are now saying that certain materials can be received from the moon. However, we have the underestimated opportunities which are offered by the nuclear energy at hand, and definitely many participants in the international life are interested in the development of the peaceful nuclear energy. However, this process gives rise as well to the nuclear non-proliferation issues, because at least two problems can cause concern. First of all, it is the uranium enrichment and the work with the trade fuel, which can lead in both processes to the creation of military fuel or weapon fuel. So we need to find a solution which would offer an opportunity for those who want to develop their peaceful nuclear energy, and at the same time that solution should provide the safety and security matters. This was discussed during the Eurozone summit in St. Petersburg, and we are proposing the establishment of the nuclear enrichment cycles, which would also offer equivocal approach of everyone who wants to participate in the process, so that the access would be equal at no discriminatory basis. For instance, in case with Iran, this could be used. Moreover, that you know that during the meeting, a number of meetings, such proposals were made to Iran by Russia. During the meeting in St. Petersburg, my colleagues from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan did not exclude the opportunity of participating in this process. This could be a future-oriented project with the participation of those countries which have significant, large deposits of uranium raw materials. And such centers should not be unique. Russia is a natural partner for the resolution of tasks of such type, bearing in mind the high level of development of the nuclear energy in the country and possession of great school and knowledge, as well as professionals and experts in the nuclear infrastructure. We believe that such centers could be established in other countries of the nuclear club under the condition of non-discriminatory access to such resources. We should say that in the general amount of generation, Russia possesses about 16-17% belonging to nuclear energy in production. In a number of countries, for instance in France, it is 80% of energy which is generated by nuclear energy. If by the year of 2010 we manage to reach the figure of 25% in Russia, then this will be a good figure already. We know that such production is possible in the Urals, in Siberia, and in a number of northern regions. Definitely this is to be done at a modern and safe and secure level. There are such fast reactors, high-speed reactors, which are safe enough, and we need good cooperation here, not only with the countries of the nuclear club, but also with everyone who is interested in such work. The first channel. Anton Vernisky, the first channel. The question about the national priority projects and how is the development going on in the region of those directions, and also the fact that the resources which have been allocated for those purposes are being stolen, allegedly.
So such a danger is always there, that the budgetary funds might be used non-officially or simply stolen. I count on the system being built to execute these projects will work. It will not only be efficient, but also absolutely transparently organized, without any criminals to be detected whatsoever. I count also on the government, which now has been bestowed with the execution of these national projects, as you know. I count on honesty. I believe it will be right if the public chamber and the deputies' corps on ground, where these projects will be developed, will, whatever it takes with regards to the execution of project and budgets, to be day on day under their purview. This is not a panacea to address all the problems faced by the country, of course not. But this is an impulse, a signal to give in those directions rather, which we deem currently at this stage of the development of socio-economic sphere as our priority. That's healthcare, education, accessible housing, agriculture. As you see, this includes the so-called real sector of economy, humanitarian spheres, humanitarian sphere, education and healthcare for one, are very closely interlinked with the development of economy, since without a human element, without investing in a human being, we will not be able to address any problem. Currently, I will not dwell in these problems, we've talked a lot about it already. But the first info, the preliminary information we get of what's going on the ground in the regions are of positive nature. Generally, in February, the elections will start at the grassroots of education, of healthcare, rather. I'm aware of what's going on with the situation with regards to this education of rather healthcare specialists which are not in this category, but 50% of staff are not there. Some overspill is possible there, but we have given the signal to address the problem, and in the regions the governance will have to, I will stress the point, will have to address other accompanying questions to improve the status of other healthcare specialists. We've started to disperse funds to teachers of schools who are doing the administration work in the classrooms, and now this segment of healthcare service will also be covered, and we'll set up centers of high technologies of healthcare soon to bring closer high tech to population, since Moscow, Nizhny Novgorod and Moscow are not the only places to take care of, and it will be costly to travel here and there. In agriculture as well, things are being done in these regions. All these things are interlinked. The housing to year 2010 and the accessible, affordable housing within the frameworks of this national project is another thing. We know these problems, we understand them, but one thing help the other, will be complementary in order to address all the problems in these spheres which are now on the table. As regards cameraman, we told you not to use flash, since TV have complaints regarding flashes. Now, okay, on the fourth row, please. Can I ask my question in English?
It's Richard Denton. I'm a documentary filmmaker making a program inside the Kremlin. So it's a more personal question. Over the last 10 days, we've been filming you at many different events and meetings, both of the day, the evening, and at the weekends. And it seems like a crazy busy schedule. And you've been at it for 5 years. And I wondered how you personally feel about what you've been able to do, about the results of all of that work over the last 5 years. Are you personally satisfied with it, or would you like to have achieved more?
Any human being can never be fully satisfied with the achievements if he is healthy and normal. We always want more. Having said that, what has been achieved over the past time, I believe, is quite satisfactory result. I can recall the end of year 1999, and today's status, both of economy and governance and social sphere, there's a big difference there. And this difference is of positive nature. We have strengthened the federation. We have brought back the Chechen Republic to the constitutional field of our Russian Federation through the legal means, democratic means, first and foremost. Vote on Constitution and on the candidacy of the President, on the election of the Parliament, would not have been possible to achieve otherwise. We have made strong steps to reinforce our economy. In fact, we have paid with our foreign debts. We stand ready to further and speedily to pay on the government debts in Russia. We have significantly, by millions worth of, reduced the numbers of our people living beyond the poverty line. We have significantly reduced the number of unemployed people. We have grown incredibly our gold and high foreign currency reserves. We're now able to carry out weighted, balanced policy with the influx of petroleum dollars, accumulating part of these petroleum dollars in the stabilization fund. We have significantly augmented real incomes of the population, which is most important here. But of course, many things remain to be done, many problems. And I hope, moving forward in the same manner, will be as efficiently address those. Please? No, to do that, we need to work, of course, naturally. And I don't think that any of us can be surprised with the intense schedule, both of the President and the government and others. Now, here at the periphery, in this sector, Oleg Rakitov, Radio Russia. Vladimir Vladimirovich, last year several governors were changed and you took responsibility that you would appoint those candidates, put forward them for the Legislative Assembly. So I'd like to know, what's the principle, what are the criteria of your selection for the new governors? Well, answering to the previous questions, I said we don't appoint, and I don't appoint governors. I suggest, I put forward their candidacy to the Legislative Assembly, and they would in fact bring to power this or that candidate put forward by the president. There is a law adopted that he, representing the party who has won at the regional level, has the right to define such a candidacy. Criteria, these are personal and business efficiency of a person to carry out the functions which will have been inscribed in the set of tasks put forward for the governance leaders in the region. That's about the experience first, that's a good intention, and the knowledge and skill of work, decency, and most importantly, practical results of the background of the previous career. Russia Journal, please. Igor Kazhavin, TV Russia News. Last week, there has been more talk in the government regarding the value-added tax from 18 to 13 to 16%. Different views were expressed. Has any consolidated decision been made up till now, and what's your personal perspective on this one? Well, the question indeed is very acute to be discussed further. I don't believe that the final dots have been put on this matter. In responding to this question, however, I'd like to start from what really matters here, and I would ask of you to pay attention to it. Taxes will be reduced. General tax burden on the Russian economy today is 36, approximately 0.8% of GDP. Now, deducting all the revenues to the budget coming from high prices on oil and other energy sources today, then this tax burden will be much smaller, but still it remains today quite heavy for the purposes of such a developing economy as Russia happens to be. In other countries, finding themselves in similar circumstances, the tax burden is smaller. Even them addressing social projects have to augment that tax burden, but we need to reduce it. The question is when, what taxes, and in what speed. Any decision in economy will bring about certain repercussions. Drastic reduction of any tax, as we understand, will be accompanied with the increase of the cash inflow in economy, and today we need to fight inflation, to reduce it to just one-digit number. We should understand what's going to happen while we will reduce any tax, including VAT. To what level? What that will do with the cash mass? Is our economy able to digest that cash mass? Will this cash be left in hands of the business community in their pockets? Will be invested? Will the economy be prepared to absorb it? Or it will go offshore, taken out of the country? And there will be no real economic impact on our economy, only exhaust. So we'll be faced with the problem of secondary nature as repercussion goes. So we need to take into account all of this and take sensible, coordinated decision directed at reduction of tax burden. BBC, will you please stand up to be observable? 1 second, please. That's 10th row, I guess.
President, I would like to also ask a question in English, if possible. It's been more than a week now since British diplomats in Moscow were accused of spying. Has a decision been taken on whether the 4 men will be expelled? And how do you respond to accusations in the West that the spy scandal was conceived by Moscow as a way of justifying tightening control on non-governmental organizations in Russia? Thanks.
Now, as regards NGOs, I have expressed my attitude linking to the scandal you've just referred to. When I was in St. Petersburg, the non-governmental organizations are necessary for the society as regards control over the activities of the head of state and the authorities. This is an important component of the public body of society, and the state in Russia will support NGOs. We come out for transparency of their finance. We come out for these organizations being independent and not being governed by marionette holders abroad. Otherwise, we will compromise the activities of NGOs. But we cannot stay aloof to such facts, since NGOs cannot be used and should not be used as a tool of their foreign policies by some states on the territory of other states. Now, as regards all sorts of spy-related scandals, we really are sorry about the fact that in this interstate relations we are confronted with such activities with our British partners, and we assume that at a certain level authority, the relevant decisions will be adopted, and therefore the problems we've been faced with will not reduce the level of our interaction with our British partners. We'll discuss, I'm sure, personally with the Prime Minister. At any rate, the nature and quality of our relations today are so firm and fundamental that such scandals, fortunately, cannot torpedo the foundation of our relationship with Great Britain. Now, as regards the decision on expulsion, I've also mentioned it. Well, let them stay here, stay in the embassy residence position. We're pleased these people are under our control now. And, well, how the colleagues will respond? Well, you're aware of the fact that residents in any country, in diplomatic representation of any country, there are clean diplomats and there are representatives of special services. Well, we have not identified all of them. Well, let them stay here. We've been asked by the colleagues of Georgia to give them the floor. Okay, somewhere in the back, please. Georgian TV, Tamara Gurtsevidze. Vladimir Vladimirovich, now the new year started with the new range of aggravation of our relationship. That's so-called gas or energy war. And even it's now dependent on weather. The weather of our relationship is dependent on it too. So how would you characterize the current situation? For many years I have been asking this question. Will there be any thaw in our relationship? I believe this has to do not with the weather first, but with the ability of certain political figures in Georgia to adequately assess the situation in relationship to Russia. Well, misfortune has occurred. The deliveries have been suspended. Our specialists day and night have been working in the mountains under the minus 30 degrees centigrade temperatures to restore the supplies of energy resources to Georgia. Well, now, what have we seen from the Georgian governance? They've been spitting on us, and the people in Georgia should know that such policies with respect to Russia will not improve the status of men in the street in Georgia. Responsibility is in the yard of Georgian authorities. Now, as regards our intents here, we believe that the Georgian people are very close to us, both historically, culturally. You know how many Georgians have been living in Russia? How many Georgians, citizens of Russian Federation, rather, and the former Soviet Union, have made their bit, a great bit, to improve and to strengthen development of Russia. We cherish that. We will never forget about that. We hold that in high esteem, and we believe it's a good bridge to strengthen friendly relations all across the board. We are prepared to do that. NTV TV company. Kondrativ, NTV TV. Vladimir Vladimirovich, you have repeatedly mentioned the new law allowing those people who have been representing the party who would have won in the region to recommend the chief of the executive branch in the region. I'd like to know whether a federal law of such nature will be adopted and the winning party will there be able to put forward a representative of their party to be head of the government. And maybe you could now probably not necessarily announce the person who will be after you. Maybe you have made your own decision on your continuator. Thank you.
When I was talking to my Chechen friends, there was a preliminary discussion of the candidacy for the presidency of Chechnya, and I was asking who could be, in your view, the president of the Chechen Republic, and the reply was, you can ask anyone in the street who could be, and there would always be a reply, me. We have so many people in Russia who could govern a country. And the final answer to this can only be given by a vote by the citizens of the Russian Federation, by the people. Well, party and the government. Everything is possible in historical terms. But I am against implanting or introducing such a practice in the Russian political reality. It is my deep conviction that in the post-Soviet space, in the conditions of the developing economies, strengthening statehood, in the conditions of the developing, in the final stages of the principles of federalism, what we need is a strong presidential authority or power. Because we know all too well what has happened in such a developed and stable economy as the Federal Republic of Germany. Quite recently, it was only It took only a small new political party, new left, to appear on the political scene of Germany. As a result of elections, country found itself in a political impasse. If it were not for a political culture and the goodwill of Chancellor Schröder and the abilities of the acting Chancellor Ms. Merkel, nobody knows how the situation would evolve in Germany. How would it influence or affect the citizens of Germany? Speaking of us, who live in the post-Soviet space, we have yet to develop a sustainable national system of political parties. How can one talk here in such conditions of a government denominated or nominated by a winning party? But in historical terms, it can all be possible. Row 2, please. Next to you. Selimkhan Yelimkhanov, молодежная смена Chechnya. Vladimir Vladimirovich, could we now speak of the finalization of the counter-terrorist operation in the Chechen Republic? If not, when will it be finalized? You can quite justifiably call it the end of the counter-terrorist operation, taking into account that the law enforcement agencies of Chechnya have now taken the brunt of responsibility for the security and safety within Chechnya. All bodies of the state power have been created in Chechnya. It will mean that all law enforcement agencies will continue to be strengthened, including Procurator's Office, courts, law firms, and of course the Justice Ministry of Chechnya. All of this, of course, and I hope and I am confident, will result in further enhanced stability in Chechnya. In other republics of the Caucasus, we are more concerned with the situation than in Chechnya. And the law enforcement agencies in Chechnya are working ever more actively in controlling the situation, and they've taken up more and more responsibility. Moreover, fortunately or unfortunately, they work more efficiently than the federal forces. They feel more responsibility, and we understand, and I would like to draw your attention to this, that the Interior Ministry of Chechnya has amongst its numbers the people who quite recently fought against the federal forces. It is a very complicated and very painful process, both for the Federation and for the Chechen Republic, but I do believe that despite all negative aspects that accompany such a process, this process is overall a positive one. When people on their own consciousness recognize that the future of their land, of their republic, of their people is only within the Russian Federation, they can only be supported, and we will continue to do so. We are aware of the local customs, the local conditions, and they, of course, are able, taking this into consideration, to achieve better and more efficient results, sometimes even better than the federal forces, which is a positive aspect. If things continue the way they are now, we will of course, be able to talk of the end of the counter-terrorist operation in Chechnya. But there is one point which I would like to mention separately. A very positive thing is that the people from different political areas are attracted into the law enforcement, because for more than 10 years, nobody was paying attention to law enforcement. The respect for law, an ability to enforce the law, all of this requires quite serious work to better train all those who work in the law enforcement. Interfax, please. Vladimir Vladimirovich, returning to the economic issues, oil and gas sector, what are the prospects of this? What are the areas and directions of its future development? Any ideas of nationalization, deprivatization, or strengthening of the existing monopolies? Well, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the weather is being dictated in this area by major multinationals. If you take an American company, a European company, these are all major, strong, powerful multinationals. We should follow the same path. In some countries, not only in OPEC countries, but in some European countries as well, like in Norway, oil and gas sector has, for all practical purposes, been controlled by the state. Statoil and another are all state-owned companies. We have not chosen this option. Yes, Gazprom today is a company controlled by the state as a major shareholder. But we've announced a number of years ago that we will return, or rather maintain and re-establish the control of the state over Gazprom. We have done this in the open manner. But this process has been accompanied by the liberalization of the trade in Gazprom shares, enabling investors from the financial markets to enter Gazprom. We have chosen also a strategic partner, a German company owing 10%. For all practical purposes, this is an international company. Rosneft will continue in the same manner. IPO is being prepared right now as we speak for the Rosneft. It will become a major international player as well. We have about a dozen private, relatively large oil companies like Lukoil, TNK, BP, Surgutneftegas, and others. Nobody has any intention of nationalizing those. They will continue to develop under the market conditions as private companies. And such a balance, I would say, is the most appropriate for today's Russian economy, including a very active participation of our foreign partners as shareholders. You know the split of 50-50 in TNK BP between TNK and BP, British Petroleum. I have regular meetings with the shareholders and our British colleagues, as they tell it to me. They're quite satisfied. I believe 1/3 of the BP production is accounted for by Russian deposits, or 25% at least, which is a major volume. And most importantly, the reserves of BP in Russia are growing steadily, and our strategy is to place those reserves and resources under the control of private companies. This is the way we have chosen. Let's revisit the balcony, please. A lady in white. Вера Харламова, Тихоокеанская звезда, Хабаровск. The question is whether the developments in Chelyabinsk would affect the transition to the commercial contractual army. That awful event in Chelyabinsk is being monitored by both the Ministry of Defense and the government. That was a very horrible event. And I would like to draw your attention to the following. The Russian army is a part of our society. And we all of us, I'm not trying to pass the buck here. Let's be realistic. We're all responsible for the state of the society that we live in, including mass media. By the by, it concerns the psychological atmosphere, it concerns the presence of violence on our TV screens, it also concerns the state policies, including control over the implementation of the orders within the armed forces. It has to do with the system of the indoctrination within the Ministry of Defense. And the Minister of Defense will shortly report to me on the future action to be taken, including the establishment of the military police. It would include control over the observance of the laws within the armed forces, which should be more strict. As for the transition to the contractual form of services, by the end of 2007, we should introduce another new form of developing our armed forces, whereby the major part of our armed forces would consist of the people hired on a contractual basis, including the ground forces, paratroopers, and Navy. And as of 2008, we will introduce a 1-year conscription service in the armed forces. in addition to the contractual service. РИА Новости, Наталья Горбунова. Recently, we have seen more cases of ethnic violence in Russia, but nobody dares saying that neo-fascists have appeared in Russia. The main term is hooliganism, which is not, this is not right. Well, there are demonstrations of neo-Nazism, and those who should be termed specifically as such. That applies to the Interior Ministry, to the Procurator's Office, and to the courts. We have sufficiently developed legal system, and our penal code envisages punishment for such crimes. And I do believe, and I am confident, that law enforcement agencies, the courts and Procurator's Office must and should and ought react in accordance with the law. Only then we'll be able to fight this evil more efficiently. From China, our colleagues, please. Xinhua Agency. Vladimir Vladimirovich, we're looking forward to meeting you in March in China. Could you share with us your ideas of the future visit to China? What are your expectations? This is question number one. Number two, there is a year of Russia underway in China. The Chinese year will be celebrated in Russia next year. What is the significance of those events for the strengthened relations between the two countries? Thank you. Well, first of all, the interaction between Russia and China is a very important factor of strengthened stability in the world, strategic stability at that. And we cherish this very much. We appreciate the desire of our Chinese partners and friends to act in the similar vein. We intend to continue our strategic partnership with the Chinese People's Republic of China on the basis of the documents signed, including the Treaty on Friendship and Strategic Interaction. And based on these documents, we managed to resolve a very difficult issue. For 40 years, the Soviet Union, Russia on the one hand, and the People's Republic of China on the other hand, were involved in the border negotiations. 40 years. The history of the relations between the countries has never seen the border issues settled. We managed to resolve this, making reciprocal steps to meet each other's concerns, acceptable to each other. Some 3 years ago, we have tasked ourselves to reach $20 billion worth of our trade. Last year, I'm glad to report, we intended to reach this within 5 years. That was 2.5 years ago. In 2005, we have reached a level of $29 billion of trade with the People's Republic of China. Our next milestone is $60 billion, which could be quite realistic. I'm confident if we are to continue to treat our interaction the same vein, we will reach that. What could one expect from our visit next spring to the PRC? We will inaugurate the Russian year, the year of Russia and the PRC, and I'm hopeful very much that it will be accomplished with flying colors. Such events would certainly facilitate further bringing together the peoples of our countries. Itartas, please. Veronika Romanenkova. It's been 2 months since the last changes in the government and in the administration. How do you evaluate the performance of the new appointees and of the government per se? Could one characterize this as the preparation for the future elections? And secondly, any ideas about your future work? Maybe you would move to St. Petersburg to become the head of the constitutional courts. Are you sending me into exile? Well, I've been talking about the results of the 2005. There are problems and issues which we did not manage to resolve, like containing inflation at a level of 8.5, and we also we did not plan such high nominal growth of the Russian currency, ruble. There are other issues and problems where the government and the central bank did not manage to achieve the desired results. But overall, the results are quite satisfactory. Well, speaking of the changes in the government of the Russian Federation, they were aimed at improving the quality of the work of the government, especially insofar as the large-scale plans of the national priority projects are concerned. And of course, an special attention being paid to the energy sector, high-tech sector, and the defense sector. Therefore, Mr. Medvedev was appointed and Mr. Ivanov was promoted to become the vice prime minister, so that he is in charge of all the areas and sectors aimed at improving our defense capability. The analysis of the current work by the government in January demonstrates that we've made the right decisions. As for elections, well, I think that one should not overuse or abuse this subject matter in any democratic country. But the government of the Russian Federation must be thinking about the results of its activities as those reflect on the lives of the people of our country. They must work rather than politicize and think about the elections and what places they would get. As for me, before becoming the president, I lived and worked here in Moscow, and I have considered myself to be a Muscovite, and I worked in the Security Council. I was the head of the government. Therefore, I haven't come here from St. Petersburg, but I have worked in Moscow. Speaking of St. Petersburg, of course, this is my native town, and I miss it. And it gives me great pleasure to visit it, and I do hope that I will have opportunities to visit it more. Well, movement of the Constitutional Court, I think it could be justified given the super-centralization of the central authority in Moscow. There is such a practice in other countries, like in the Federal Republic of Germany, where the Constitutional Court of which resides in Karlsruhe. The same thing in Switzerland. This in no way undermines, or would undermine, the status of Moscow as capital, which has been, is, and will be the capital of the Russian Federation. And small, slight decentralization is only healthy.
Radio company St. Petersburg Third Channel. Why don't we forget about the policy and economy for a certain time? We know that we have very hectic time. Do you have at least some time to watch a film or to read the book you like? If you have this time, have you any recollections of the past time which you enjoyed, be it Master and Margarita or the Day Watch? I don't want to go into any type of promoting, and definitely I have an opportunity to read books, to watch films. A great thing is audiobook, which you can hear in car when moving to office or to any other place where you work. I now, with great pleasure, listen to the audiobook by Khrushchevsky, his lectures on Russian culture, and you know that it was known publicly that I watched the 9th platoon and the 9th company, and I'm glad that the cinema-making industry of Russia is reviving. I'd like to congratulate those talented people who managed to do so, to manage to revive this sphere of Russian cultural life, who managed to gain great results using their skills. Argument in facti. If you don't mind, I'd like to raise the question on the feeling of the people. I know that the consumption of alcohol has reduced in Russia. This is great if it is truly so, but the problem is that many people have refused to drink for the benefits of spending money on gambling. And I saw on numerous occasions when people spent fortunes throwing money into slot machines. Don't you think that time has come to resolve this problem, how to limit this? I agree with you that this is a problem. This is an addiction on gambling. This addiction can be stronger sometimes than drug addiction or alcohol addiction, and there are many cases in the world, tragic cases caused by such addiction. Definitely we have to think about protecting our people against those threats which emanate from the gambling sector. And on the legislative level, the work is being conducted. The work is being done together with the members of the State Duma. Definitely we have to take into consideration the experience of those countries which have been developing this business for a long time already. I'm not trying to apply any text to the business or give any particular solutions to you at the moment, because everything is only being discussed now, and I will definitely be devising my own position on that, but in general I will agree to those principles which would be proposed by the members of the government and the State Duma. AFP, you have the word. Could you please stand up?
Delphine
Tuvina, France Press. Vladimir Vladimirovich, you meet often with President Lukashenko and openly show your support to his regime, but at the same time, people are saying about the dictatorship. How can you motivate your support to Lukashenko and the possibility for free elections in Belarus in March? Well, free elections is always possible. If speaking about my meetings with the President of Belarus, then they are motivated not by the support of the regime, as you put it, but they are motivated by the support of the brotherly nation of Belarus. I should say that with Belarus we have integration processes underway. Those are complicated processes. They very often cause sharp discussion, as it was 2 years ago when the prices for energy resources in Belarus were never more connected with internal prices for energy resources in Russia. And it is absolutely incorrect to say that we are supporting this or another political leader at any cost. We are conducting our own balanced policy, which is aimed at the improvement of relations with a state, in this particular case with the people of Belarus. For ages we had special relations developing between our peoples, and they can by no means be compared with the relations of Belarus with France or any other France or any other European state. Don't forget about it. Sector A, please. Please, would you pass the microphone to those colleagues who sit up there? Yes, so there is in the 12th row, there is a lady who would like to raise a question.
Aysel
Gelekhanova, Tverskaya Жизнь newspaper. You know, Vladimir Vladimirovich, that there was the mega project as Nashi, or ours. So they call could you specify the question? Who do they call? They call the current political elites, the generation of defeated ones, losers. Well, the thing is that young people are always tempting towards some radical sayings, and young people always want to get some radical great results for themselves and for their countries. I think that their intentions are good, because we have to be oriented towards great victories, and only then we'll receive successful results. If speaking about the aspects of defeats and failures, then I believe that during different periods of the modern Russian history, those feelings were present in the society, but I think that this negative tendency has been overcome in the pace of the development of the Russian economy and social life. Moskovsky Komsomolets, first row here. Natalia Galimova, Moskovsky Komsomolets. Vladimir Vladimirovich, today you have already spoken on the reasonability of moving the Constitutional Court to St. Petersburg. Do you think that some other federal bodies should be moved to St. Petersburg or any other city in Russia? If yes, then which in particular? For the Constitutional Court and for Petersburg, this is more or less natural affair, bearing in mind the fact that the largest complex in the center of St. Petersburg is being freed there now. The building of Senate and the Synod in the very heart of St. Petersburg, due to the fact that the federal archives of Russia are moving to a new specially built facility. The Constitutional Court does not enjoy good residential conditions here in Moscow. That is why the moving of the court to the Synod and Senate building in St. Petersburg will not cause additional excessive costs, because reconstruction of the building will be conducted independent of whether the court moves there or not. So, and here we managed to reach two goals, hit two targets with one shot. We, at the same time, renovate the building in St. Petersburg and provide new headquarters for the court, and this will also improve the status of St. Petersburg, because then we'll be able to be speaking about its capital aspirations and capital positions, because one of the heads of the branches of power in Russia will be residing in St. Petersburg. The fact that it's going to be remote from Moscow will not resolve different other problems in resolving different aspects of its functioning, but this is also one of the possible components. If speaking about the moving of other branches of power, I think that in certain cases, as of today, this could be good from the point of view of decentralizing the powers, but I think it would be very costly and so far unreasonable. We have many other questions, other purposes on which we can spend the money rather than moving of this other authority to another place. The Republic of Tatarstan, a newspaper, late last year, with the use of a large Russian newspaper, some residents of a settlement in Tatarstan, with the help of a newspaper, have noticed that they have Wahhabism movement in their village. And that was done allegedly without good thinking about it, because a good village, good settlement were thrown allegedly and unreasonably at the same time into the group of Wahhabis. And this has definitely casts shadow on their life. And of course, we should say that the Russian authorities are simply afraid of such ideas as the national policy. How do you estimate the situation? I cannot share your views. The fact that the incident which you mentioned casts shadow over Muslims or Tartars of Russia, at least because I myself hear this for the first time. Hadn't you said about that in such a wide audience here, millions of Russians would never learn about that except for this opportunity of live broadcasting. I think it's absolutely unreasonable to say that a newspaper has made a report which has cast shadow. I don't think that this is a correct approach in describing the situation. Of course, the people who faced the negative manifestations of Wahhabism definitely face problems, because Wahhabism itself probably is, or Muslim religion is not causing any threat, but some negative manifestation of it, or different distorting of the relation, and this is definitely not a good thing. But speaking about the words, which, as the Russian saying goes, is not a sparrow which you cannot catch when it is freed. In our case, the word can be caught and can be put behind the bars. So in our case, we should say that we have to act so that all violations in the mass media should not be left without attention, and in case there are manifestations of xenophobia or any other aspects of national or ethnic intolerance, should receive a more strict reaction, including the norms foreseen by the criminal procedure codes of the Russian Federation, the criminal code. And I believe that in the run of the annual meetings in the prosecutor's office and in other ministries, we'll discuss such matters as well. Gamov, Komsomolskaya Pravda. I wanted to ask about Andrei Sychov, but yesterday during the meeting in Kremlin, you have given direct reports on this situation. And I would like to raise a question on our history. Tomorrow, we are going to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the first president of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, and I want to ask whether the time has come to evaluate the outcomes of the Yeltsin epoch. Do you probably recollect this, the history when Deng Xiaoping was asked how he recollects and how he evaluates the results of the Great French Revolution? He said, from his point of view, that there has been too little time since the French Revolution to evaluate its results. So what can we say then about our almost recent past, the 1990s? Russia is still at the break of its history, and profound changes have been taking place in policy, in the statehood, in the social sphere of Russia. This was the time when great losses were appeared for the population of our country, for our citizens. We are all aware, very well aware of the difficulties we have gone through. It is difficult to say how each of us, including me, would act under such conditions. We can be characterizing that period from any angle of view, and the activity, the deeds of the first president of the Russian Federation can be estimated and evaluated from different points of views. But we should say that it was at the time when Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin was at the helm of the country, that the Russian people have received the ultimate goal of those changes, freedom. And this is the great attainment of Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin. Third row, please.
Sakha-Syria-Yakutia newspaper. Vladimir Vladimirovich, during your recent trip to Yakutia, once again you had a chance to see how harsh our environment is. Now, the meeting you held in Yakutsk regarding economic problems, to address those we think will be possible, and they will affect greatly the socio-economic situation in the Republic. But that's another thing. Here, I'd like to ask you about what really hurts. That's how we'll address the question for pensions for the people up north. And regional Far East Northern coefficient should be added to it, we guess. So this relates both to Yakutia and other northern territories. You referred to application that to national projects. Basically, yes. Now, this question is being discussed in Duma, and the relevant decision has been adopted. Discussion is underway between the government and the State Duma. So let's wait to get the decisions which the government and the deputy courts will come up to through this negotiation. And I would like to see to it that now that these bylaws and laws be adopted without any legal errors, without legal dirt, so to say, that all the decisions be responsible, fully balanced from the economic point of view, and from the perspective of the need to address social issues having to do, among other things, with the people living up north. One of the main problems here, I believe, is about the fact that there's a problem related to the stay of the pensioners after they retire up there. Now, I believe that any pensioner, if he lives up north, should have a right to get that national march. Otherwise, we'll boost their return to the places, those pensioners, where they have got those additional payments. But the government wants to see to it that these territories be inhabited by both young people in the world of labor. There is a there is a contradiction between the means and tools, certainly, which has to be addressed here to reach that goal. Thank you. Japan newspaper Sakiona. Mr. President, I have two questions. Last November, you paid a visit to Japan. early this year. What's your expectation with regards to the development of the relationship with Japan? And one more thing. During your conversations with the Japanese journalists last year, in the end of the last year, you said that to you, judo is everything. Could you specify a little bit? To you, what is judo to you? In St. Petersburg, there will be a competition named after Putin, I understand, on judo. First and foremost, I'm satisfied with the results of my visit to Japan. First, the discussion on all, including those most complicated issues regarding trees, was very open this time, was very subject-oriented. I believe finally we have understood each other perfectly right. So if we want to seek solution of the issue, we should embark on that path. Now, if we want to use the problems of the Kuril archipelago to address the domestic problems, to portray ourselves as samurais with the sabering with the swords here, then we also are prepared to play that game. We could also saber and rattle the swords. But as far as I understood, our Japanese partners, them assessing the realities, have embarked on a new path of relationship, and jointly we have started to seek the ways and means to address the problems which will be acceptable both to the Japanese and the Russian sides, not undermining hereby the international agreements of Yalta, Potsdam and San Francisco. With goodwill on both sides, I'm confident we'll find such a solution. Russia will do its best to find such solution with respect paid to the Japanese interests, and certainly being guided by our national interests too. Now, as regards judo, I like very much this sport. I believe this is part of world culture. The slogan of judo is well known. The motto of it, to those at least who are involved and fond of that sport, the motto sounds like this: harmony with the world around us and with yourself, which is a very important fundamental philosophic notion to reach the end in any walk of life. That's the first thing. Second, courage with decency. These are characteristic features of this sport, and we in Russia will do whatever it takes, both in policies and in sports, to act according to such principles. Internet, I understand, is here, please. Internet publication. Irina Grushkevich, portal for Russia. The question is, last year, Vladimir Vladimirovich, a set of documents was adopted on affordable housing. Now experts have found out some contradictions with regards to the town building and construction codes. So how much time it will take, and is there any fear that such set of documents would cause frustration, not understanding on the part of the people, like it happened with the law on monetization of in-kind benefits? Well, I hope there will be no surprises, misunderstandings. So you have pinpointed the weakest points here. Unless we cut the bureaucracy, red tape, there will be no efficient implementation of this law. This relates to both megapolises and other territories in Russia. Therefore, changes are necessary. Changes are aimed at providing for necessary implementation of this housing program by the year of 2010 and to make it a housing affordable program. We have provided for certain measures having to do with the increase of the charter capital of the relevant structures involved in the system of mortgage and dotations and subsidies for citizens, and first and foremost for younger people. subsidies will be dispersed on the territories according to the budget resource and on the categories of people, primarily youngsters. And all of that will not be implemented without the necessary changes introduced in the legislation. And I hope very much that the government and the State Duma will do it efficiently and quickly. Izvestia, please. Vladimir Kuzmich, Russian newspaper. Vladimir Vladimirovich, today repeatedly you mentioned national projects. I'd like to revisit this issue again. While working on those, you have set up such a strange mechanism when, with the efficient and active in-place State Duma and government, there is a new body now which is accountable personally to you, including ministers, deputies, representatives of regional authorities, but not the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is in charge of the government of the Russian Federation. He's responsible for everything going here in economy and some other spheres of activities of the government, including national projects. They are under him directly. The agencies, the ministries are responsible to him and accountable, and he's not simply looking at things from afar. He's really in charge to ensure 100% implementation of this main selected national projects shortly, which was done by the government state to avoid the mistakes which were referred to earlier, like stealing funds, misuse, 160 billion rubles we're talking about for this year only for the task assigned for the all-nation priority projects. So to focus the effort, the administrative effort, both of the government and of the regions, administration of the president, all of that has required, in my opinion, justified solutions with regards to setting up additional mechanisms to achieve these ends. And I believe this is justified, and I hope that this work will be put forward efficiently, even more efficiently, I hope, than with respect to other federal task programs. Now, on the balcony, you lady, please. The young lady on the balcony, please. Good afternoon, Volgograd Municipal News. Over the recent years, a large portion of young people would like to choose for politics. And what's their chance and what's the role of the young politicians in Russia? That's a global question. The role of youngsters in politics of any country is very important, bearing in mind that in the hands of the people who we talk about as youngsters of our country today, tomorrow that generation will take care of the entire country and be responsible of the lot of our state. The sooner the younger people are involved in the political activities, the better. Having said that, and on top of that, young people are void of stereotypes and stigmas which would stay in the way of them taking bold decisions. Of course, the numbers of youngsters should be balanced in politics, especially in authorities and administrations, remembering that in these authorities you need people with a shared deal of experience, skills, too. But I would welcome, and I will welcome involvement of younger people in political activities. That's about my attitude towards it, and I count on the active life stance taken by youngsters, which is in demand and necessary for Russia today. Greece? Afanasyev Kyrinos, DVD Greece. Vladimir Vladimirovich, over the past month, there has been a tendency to settle the Cyprus problem. You met almost all players, the Turks, the Greeks, the Cypriots. Many people have been saying that this year, perhaps you will finalize this. What's your assessment? What is the role of Russia in this process? And basically, has your policies been changed? One gets the impression of that. Over my 20 years in Moscow, well, there have been no spy stones or rocks, but last year I mean, before you talked about it, but is there any change with regards to Cyprus? You mentioned the visa problem. The problem is still there as regards Greece and other places. Okay, I'll start with your last point. The problem is still there, yes, but I believe we're moving in the right direction. Our Cypriot friends and partners have agreed to facilitate the visa granting procedures for certain categories of the Russian citizens, and for all citizens, they've been creating maximum favorable conditions for visa servicing them, which are most favorable. Having said that, we believe that it's quite possible with Cyprus to come back to the non-visa regime, and I believe that the economy of Cyprus is much interested in that influx of Russian tourists would be pleased to go there. They have been recreating, including in the Greek part of the island. If that is to happen, you know, there are many depolitized people who don't know what's going on in Cyprus. If that does happen, they will move to the Turkish part of the island or Turkey. You only need to go to the border, pay $20, they stamp it in your passport, and you're free to go. Now, Cyprus is a country which naturally has borders as a sea, Mediterranean Sea that is, and it's quite possible to work out such a system whereby a tourist traveling to Cyprus, having a Cyprus visa, would not be able, without a special permission to permit to go to other European Union country, to the Schengen area for one. This can be done. We ask our Cypriot partners and our friends and colleagues in Brussels to give it a thought, which will not disrupt the entire Schengen rules. As you know, we've been working with Brussels on the non-visa mode, and I expect that sooner or later this question will be addressed with regards to entire Russia, and then the problem with regards to Russian tourists visiting Cyprus will also fade away. But once again, this can be done with regards to Cyprus on exclusive basis, not disrupting general rules. Now, as regards our policies with respect to the Cyprus track, it has not been changed, but we would like very much to see to it that our policy be well balanced and all the participants in the process, both the Turkish Republic and Northern Territory and Greece, and the Cyprus Republic as a whole would trust what Russia has been doing on the international arena generally and on the Cyprus settlement in particular. We'll continue to work with the General Secretary of Secretary General of UN. We believe that only people living on the island themselves can define their lot, and we hope that the acceptable for both and North and South solutions will be found. We believe that the northern part of Cyprus also has been manifesting quite clearly their desire to settle the issue, and this deserves our encouragement, and in economic activities that would be quite justified. Not disrupting the balance of interests, of course, not disrupting our relationship either with Greece, with whom for centuries we've been very close and friendly in our ties, nor with Cyprus as a state. Izvestia newspaper. Could you please stand up? Newspaper Izvestia, Valentina Grigorieva. Since the beginning of this year, Russia, as known, has steadily moved to the market pricing on energy sources with neighbors. A lot has been said about it, but I like to be clear about it. Do you believe that in future, now, some political benefit has been missed because of this shift, even relative to what income we have got? I don't believe that the income we've got by shifting with our closest neighbors on the pricing here would be detrimental to our policies on the post-Soviet space. On top of that, I'm confident that, on the contrary, this will help to address our foreign policy's objectives and goals. I would put to your attention that we have not drastically moved like some people would like to allude with regards to the pricing with our closest neighbors on energy sources. It's not about market pricing, but we've been talking about subsidizing former Soviet republics here at the expense of the Russian consumers, citizens of the Russian Federation, which has been occurring for 15 years now. Subsidizing Ukrainian economy, for one, annually has cost Russian citizens 3-5 billion US dollars annually. To compare with, if I'm not mistaken, the assistance on behalf of the US to Ukraine last year accounted 174 million, and here annually 3-5 billion. While, you know, the Federative Republic of Germany has been spending a lot of money to shore up the eastern territories, but they've been paying for the merger of the territories and nation. But what we've been paying here for, that's the first thing. Now, second thing. This dotation, this assistance on our part for 15 years has not been noticed by anyone, as if it was just granted, but it is not. We have our own economy, we have our own country, our own citizens, our pensioners, military, medical staff, teachers, and other budgetary professions who need our attention. Now, for a long while we've been talking about moving to market relations. It has not happened out of the blue, not at the end of the year 2005. I will recall you that with Ukraine we've been talking about it for several years now, including in the beginning of the year 2005. No surprise to our partners, none. And with other partners too, we've been discussing this matter. Today we've been doing that. That's the second thing. And third, finally, in none of our decisions when shifting to market pricing, there has been not any shadow to be casted as if it were any arbitrary rule manifestation. When we concluded with Ukraine, just one agreement in the frameworks of which we defined the conditions and terms of supply of our gas to Ukraine, and in other part of this same agreement, we discussed the conditions of supply of our gas to Europe. Then and there, during all these previous years, Europe was dependent on our agreements with Ukraine. And the prices on Russian gas to Ukraine were defined indeed by political reasoning and unclear agreements of the time. Currently, we have moved to clear formula to define prices. I'm sorry for being harsh. You're not taking these prices out from the pocket. Now, there are prices for gasoline, for oil products. All of that is quoted on the markets, and it's independent, irrespective of us. There is a formula we accept. We've been applying it with respect to all our Western partners, and now I can set that irrespective of the will of the Russian government, we will define this price by the market, by the world market. This is with regards to Ukraine. Now, referring to the supplies to the Western Europe.
We have signed two rather than one agreements. One to supply Ukraine and another to transit gas to Europe. And this is a guarantee of stability of our supplies to Western Europe, to Western consumers. This is an enormous step forward made both by Russia and Ukraine towards greater stability of the European energy markets. TVC. Ilya Korosov, in your statements, Vladimir Vladimirovich, you've mentioned time and again that the country needs investment. Quite naturally, development needs money, requires money. But members of the government from the financial and economic bloc, they say that the money in the country could only result in inflation, and it is better to place the money elsewhere. How could you explain this apparent contradiction? The president says that the country needs the money, while the economics ministers and financial ministers says that there is too much money in the country. It's the first time I come across this. Well, it says that you are not following closely what has been happening in the world in the world markets. If you look at the experience, quite recent experience of Holland, you may have known of the Dutch disease, where the influx of the oil revenues flooded the economy, resulting in negative consequences for the country. What is happening? The experts are aware of this, and I'll be very brief. Therefore, due to high oil prices, more than $60 per barrel, and the weighted average for the Urals last year was $51. As of January, we have between 58 and 60 US dollars. This major influx of the oil dollars forced the central bank to print rubles, extra rubles, thus resulting in extra inflation. To control the inflation, the central bank is forced to raise the nominal exchange rate of the Russian ruble, which in its turn results in greater imports to our country, more depressing the production within the country. These are the realities, economic realities behind the statements of our ministers of economy and finance. If it were not for the stabilization fund, then the central bank would not have been able to reach the rate of inflation that we have at about 10.9%, but rather higher. But this is one of the key points of our developments, to keep the inflation in check. We are talking about the development of SMEs, small and medium enterprises, about the reduction of the prime rate. It stands now at about 12 and 13%. Last year it was 15%. Until such time as we reach the 3 to 5% inflation, we will continue to have high interest rates in the banks, and the government would not be able to embark upon a feasible house mortgage scheme. This is a very difficult and complex equation, which should be addressed very responsibly. So far, the government has managed to do that. Dear colleagues, I am informed that we are off the air now, but we have quite a few questions left. I'm warning you, no live broadcast anymore. I thank all the broadcasting channels who broadcasted this press conference.